You're listening to the Mile Marker Podcast, where we explore trends and innovations in fleet automation and shared mobility, helping fleet-based businesses make better informed decisions and achieve full digital transformation. Welcome, everyone, to the Mile Marker Podcast. I am your host, Angela Simoes, and today's guest is Jamye Carpenter, owner and president of JRC Innovative Solutions, where she helps automotive and fleet companies say yes to collaboration, innovation, and progress. Before founding her own company, Jamye spent more than 20 years in the automotive and insurance industries, where she used her expertise in business process optimization, compliance, and organizational development to improve auction and auto remarketing operations for multiple companies. Jamye is also co-chair of the AI subcommittee for the International Automotive Remarketers Alliance. Welcome, Jamye.
Thanks for having me.
And from Ridecell, we have Mark Thomas, EVP of Strategic Alliances. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks.
So, Jamye, let's start with you giving our listeners a bit of your background and then what you're doing with companies today, like some of the big challenges you're seeing, where companies need help navigating, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I started my own business just a few months ago, and I really wanted to do something where it was a little more focused on the issues that are in our industry and the things that we're seeing. And with that, I started JRC Innovative Solutions. We are, of course, I'm very active within the industry in AI, which is part of what I'm tackling with specifically one of my customers, which is pre-owned auto logistics. And it is a transportation company, and they are using AI to help with better quoting. And then they're looking at different ways that they can also utilize AI in the industry. And then I'm also working with privacy for cars, and that is a whole different side of technology and making sure that all of that personal information that AI is gathering on all of us to help create all of these amazing products within our industry is deleted when we are no longer the one that has possession of the vehicle. So that's what I'm doing today. I did spend many years with the product AutoCheck, which is a vehicle history product. And I actually got to help create and build the product and launch that. And it's still, I feel like it's my baby because I worked with it for so long. And then I did work with UVI, which is all about AI and using that for condition report writing. And that's really where my passion was really birthed, was from that relationship and how we were using AI to generate condition reports.
So both in reading your background and part of the conversation we had previously, I mean, it really seems like you're the technology guide for companies where they're wanting to bring their systems into the 21st century. They know they need to use technology, but they're not quite sure what's the best way to do that. So especially in the world of auto remarketing, what are some of the technologies, and you kind of referenced two just now, but some of the technologies that you're seeing are the most effective, and maybe also the most where people are most receptive to implementing some new technologies?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say people are very receptive to implementing AI in condition report writing. I think that was probably the biggest hurdle that I faced when I was with UVI. I think that probably the one that everyone is most interested in right now, I would say from the last few conferences I've attended, is the valuation piece. And I really think that there's some excitement around what AI can do to help really hone in on how EVs are going to be evaluated specifically. There's so many questions around battery life and what that does, and battery health, and how do we even how do we as individuals look at the battery health of the vehicle? And then if you tie into basically the computer of the vehicle and what it's gathering, what does that really tell us? And if we know the battery health, then can we really put a specific valuation on a vehicle that's gonna be more realistic than what we can do, if we were using our little black books like we did back in the day. And I think one thing's for sure, we can't do it. And we're going to have to heavily rely on AI and how that, in conjunction with Black Book data or NADA data, how all of that's going to come together and create that valuation. So I think that's probably what people are most excited for. We are seeing it when it comes to real-time quoting in the logistics, portion of our industry. And that seems to really be exciting and catching on, just because it's so hard to give that real-time quote. And without knowing kind of what everybody else is going to quote that vehicle for, and you don't want to be so overpriced that you lose the business. You don't want to be so underpriced that you're losing revenue. So I think that we have seen that really catch on in the logistics space. And then if we look at imaging, that's been around forever. And that was another thing that UVI was really intentional about, taking what the images that were captured and then using AI to really detect that damage. So we have a lot of companies out there that have great technology when it comes to imaging, and I think they're still trying to figure out how to use AI when it comes to really diving in and looking deeper into what that tells us, the full story and transparency of the vehicle. So I think that everybody says that they want transparency, and all of our customers say, yes, we want to tell the full story, until it comes to, oh, wait, I can no longer change the auto grade for this customer over here so that I can get more money for my vehicle. So I think, there's that piece of it where maybe that there's too much information. And so until we really figure out what we can use without having to use all of it, and come up with a standard across our industry, I think it's going to be really hard really to implement any of these.
And so I think it's a great transition into the work that you're doing on the AI subcommittee, because you kind of already touched on some of those areas. And just like you said, while it may benefit the buyer, right, because they're insured to get not a lemon, right, and nothing's hidden anymore. To your point, some people may feel like, well, do they really need to know every single thing that happened with this car? So yeah, having that standardization. So we understand that on the AI subcommittee, there's kind of a certain number of areas that you're focusing. Do you want to talk about those, and then we can drill down into a couple?
Yeah. So I guess I cheated a little bit and used those 5 as kind of the precursor to where we are now. But, there was something that came to me when you were talking too. And I think when we think about our industry as a whole, you really have to separate it into dealer, consumer, and wholesale, right? And so the dealer loves that AI transparency because they're wanting to show the consumer all of the problems so that they're devaluing the vehicle they may be taking on trade, or they are giving you all of the problems that maybe you will allow them to then take into their body shop or their mechanic shop to fix for you. So dealers love it. Then you get to the wholesale side where we don't want to devalue the vehicle, we want to add value to the vehicle. So that's where I think that, oh my gosh, is too much information here, because we're not selling to the consumer. That's the dealer's responsibility. And, you get into this whole argument of what is a wholesale vehicle versus what's a retail, right? So I think if we think about it in kind of those three buckets, our committee as a whole is really focused on that wholesale remarketing. How do we get this vehicle back out after it's come off lease or off, if maybe a trade-in has already happened. So when we looked at that, we broke it down into 5 categories, and we started with customer service. We felt like that was probably the one people are most aware of with ChatGPT, the Microsoft Copilot that dealers now have access to. So we said, okay, that's going to be in our 5 because that's really what we think is going to impact our industry. But we're going to make that the bottom for us because you're either using it or you're not, but everybody kind of knows about it. So then we said, okay, what's next? And we broke it down to condition report writing, valuations, transportation, and then imaging. And what we found as a committee was we really couldn't do condition report writing, valuation, and imaging without those 3 touching each other. So we then said, okay, then that's going to move transportation down as well. So we're going to then just focus on the 3 components of condition report writing and valuations, but we can't really do that without imaging. So that's kind of what our focus is for the first quarter. And because we did kind of lump all of those in, it could take us a little more time than really just the first quarter. But that's what we're going to really try to focus on and get prepared for the it used to be IARA, but they just went through a rebranding of ARA, and there's going to be a summer roundtable where we want to present some of our findings for how we think that those 3 things are going to really impact our industry moving forward.
I was just trying to understand. So it sounds like one of the goals of AI is to just up level the amount of information. One of the drags it feels like, is that there's an asymmetry of knowledge. Maybe the person at the time selling the car knows all the issues, and the person buying the car is like, I don't know, so I'm not going to pay its full value because I'm assuming the risk. If you get to a situation where there is much, much more detailed and accurate assessment of that, it feels like it will make the market more efficient, because buyers and sellers both actually understand what the true value of that vehicle is. And wouldn't the auction houses then actually like this kind of transparency, because it means that they potentially will get a higher price for that vehicle, and presumably they get paid a percentage of the vehicle value as their cut.
So I think the fear, and I don't own an auction and I don't work at an auction, so this is just my opinion, but I think part of the fear is, do vehicles then have to even go through auction? Because at that point, the vehicle, it can give all of that information because it is just one giant computer. Then if I want to trade my vehicle, or if I want to sell my vehicle, I can then do that on my own. And I don't really need the avenue of taking it to a dealer or a third party to do that for me.
So, but what about the wholesalers? How are they? Do they take possession, and do they buy the car and then sell it, or are they a middle pass through?
So I think it depends. You do have folks that do nothing but buy in that third party market and just buy and sell. And then you do have wholesalers that work for a dealership. But again, if the consumer is no longer taking that vehicle to auction to sell it, because they want to sell it on their own to get more money, then I think that's sort of the fear. How realistic it is, I'm not sure. But I think just as we've seen with anything, the adoption of the internet, I remember being at my first conference 7 years ago, and they were like, okay, so brick and mortar auctions need to be prepared because people are going to start buying online. And the auctions were like, absolutely not. It will never happen. And, I think they were right, where those vehicles have to have a place where they can get reconditioned and ready for sale, and they've got to have a marshaling yard of sorts. But even thinking of it that way, what does the traditional auction look like in 10 or 15 years? So I don't know. I think, maybe AI can tell us if we ask it. I don't know.
And so the goal of the subcommittee is kind of look at the lay of the land, assess what's currently being used, what could happen, like what feasibility is possible technologically, or where we think things should go, and then make recommendations on
Yes.
standardization, things like that.
Yeah, so our hope is that once we bring our findings to the industry at the summer roundtable, then from there we then can hear from the remarketers, and we can hear from the auctions to say, okay, we want more information on this, or we would like to know more about these things. Or it could be just that, thanks for bringing this information to our attention, and we're just going to wait and see what happens. And so at our last conference that we just had, we really focused on, and this was not our committee for AI, but the industry advancement committee as a whole. There was the EV subcommittee said, okay, let's look at these valuations and battery health and what that's going to do. And so that third component, which we're going to bring to the next conference, is okay, now let's add some AI in that and see what happens as well, with the condition report and that sort of thing. So they're kind of building blocks too, like little bits of information that we put out there, and then let's, okay, now tie it all together and see really what that's going to do and what we need to be expecting and looking out for. And hopefully it won't take another 30 years before we see some movement at the wholesale level. But that's really just jokes, but yeah.
No, if anything, it might just be, I don't know, 3 years, not 30. I mean, things move so
Hopefully, right? Hopefully.
Yeah. So, we were talking about that the auction model is likely going to change, right? 26 years ago, they said no way to online, and now things are moving online. So it not only changes the way the business is done, but it also changes the role of the employees, right? Because when you talk about valuations, and the person, there was somebody going around and assessing damage, assessing the paint job, assessing all these things, right? And now this is starting to be done with AI and with other technologies. So can you talk a little bit about, how the human employee's role is changing, right? And then how that just kind of is flowing into how everything is changing, right?
Yeah. So I think that's another kind of unknown. And you talk to some auctions and they're like, well, if I can't get rid of the people that I'm having to hire to do condition report writing, then it does me no good. And then you have some auctions that are like, well, I have an entire staff, they do a great job, they've been trained, they have a better eye, I don't want to get rid of them. And really what I see is that you got to have both. And I don't think that in the space for which we live in, it can ever be just AI. And just a little going backwards for a minute, you know, that we're now selling cars online. It was COVID that really pushed us there, right? And so like the world shut down. If we're going to still sell vehicles, we got to do it online. Let's put them online. And when we did that, we also lost a lot of employees, specifically that $17, $18 an hour person. So with that, every auction will tell you we can't keep that employee no matter what we do. And so if we went to Indeed right now and just searched for condition report writers, there would be tons of auctions that popped up. So if you take that idea and say, okay, if I only need 2 or 3 people and I can pay them a better salary where we train them and they know exactly what a condition report writer is expected to do, and they then maybe even have the ability to even look at a vehicle to know there's a paint job instead of having to run your fingers across it, then you're only having to hire 3 people instead of 17 people. And so you can pay them a little more. And with that, then as the AI is generating those condition reports that are being written, the people then, there's no AI right now to detect smell. There's no AI right now to detect a lot of the interior things that are within the vehicle. And you still have to have somebody that can pop the trunk, somebody that can pop the hood. So that person then says, okay, these are some things that I may not have seen with the naked eye, but I do know that I'm going to just make sure, I'm going to walk the vehicle and make sure I agree with these. And then I'm going to add anything that I think the AI may have missed. So you're still, what used to take 30 minutes to write a CR, now it may take 5 minutes to write a CR. So I think the efficiency is really what we're gaining, and the reduction of the number of employees that we need to make that happen.
Right. And so in addition to, I guess, assessing the physical condition of the vehicle, because we focus on fleets here at Mile Marker. So this is also a game changer for fleets, but there's also all the telematic systems, right, associated with a fleet vehicle. So any sort of predictive maintenance, any other, I guess, fleet management systems that would be, collecting data about the vehicles. So how do those systems come into play when it comes to evaluating a vehicle for remarketing?
Yeah, so really it's enhancements, right? So the more information that we can put in that condition report, the better the report's going to be. And going back to now, I drive a Tesla. So it just amazes me on Thursday mornings when I get in my car at 9 a.m., it's going to pop up, are you going to the chiropractor? Because I usually go to the chiropractor on Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. when I'm going. And so, or if I get in the car on Saturday and it's, at 6 p.m., it'll say, are you going to visit your daughter? So already there is that predictiveness and with driving habits. So not only do I think it's going to impact fleets and how many, miles and all of that's driven on the vehicle, that's going to impact the fleets, but even our insurance companies now. And that's going back to that whole privacy of data and who owns the data. Does Tesla own my data? Do I own my data? Do I just own my data while I'm driving the vehicle? And then Tesla can use that data when I no longer own it and it's not tied to me. So it'll be really, and I think we just don't even know yet everything that AI is going to do. But I think as a whole and putting fleet in that kind of still that remarketing, because all of those off-lease vehicles, they've got to go somewhere, and every auction hopes that funnels through them. I think that it's going to be really a real game changer, and we're going to see vehicles bring more money, and we're going to see vehicles that maybe get remarketed differently. And I think that's kind of something that we haven't really touched on either. I know we kind of touched on the consumer, and I haven't taken my vehicle to a dealership to trade it. But maybe there's a station that I go to and I get a condition report written on my vehicle, and then it says, you're better off keeping this vehicle than getting rid of it. So, going back to the way I drive, and my own habits, maybe it says you really should have leased a vehicle instead of purchasing one based on your driving habits. And that would have been more economical for you, because now, the EV driver that I am, my car had the valuation that I just did on it is crap, and so I'm hoping that the more data we get, the better that the valuations of especially for us Tesla owners, but EVs in general are going to be. And I think we're also going to see a big push for more hybrid. So there was a survey done at the last convention, and it was, what do you think the future of automotive is? Is it all EV? Is it hybrid? Or is it going to stay ICE vehicles? And I think like 30% of the room said that they thought that it would be EVs. And then it was like 40% of the room said they thought it was going to be ICE. So the majority really filled in for that hybrid model. And that's something that, we're kind of right now, it's either all EV or all ICE, but there's that whole world that we're kind of missing, which is going to be that hybrid model, which is the best of both worlds. Again, I live in Alabama. I drive a Tesla. The closest, if I'm going to do a supercharger, is 30 minutes away and 45 minutes away. So maybe I want a hybrid and I don't have to have a charger in my house. And then, I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, I think that that fleet market, though, is the one that's going to see the best results from AI.
Well, the individual just has to decide for themselves, should I keep this car? Should I, trade it in? Should I, if I'm leasing it, should I buy it? So they can probably do their own homework, at least for that. But our fleet customers are the ones who are making this decision, 100,000 times a year. Do I keep
Right.
it? Do I sell it?
Right.
And the new model of interacting with their vehicles is to not just by default, when they come back from lease, to remarket them,
Right.
but put them in a second lease, a third lease, maybe put it in a rental pool, or even a car sharing where you can take high mileage vehicles that still have reliability. So there's so many more calculations in terms of how much money can you make from this vehicle,
Yeah.
in addition to the decision of, do I auction it? Do I auction it at the end of the week? When's the best time to sell it? Do I put it in
Right.
my dealership? What's the current market? Is there an overabundance of these? Having AI do all of that legwork for you to say, you know what, there are all the Prius hybrids in this zip code have been bought up by Uber drivers, and they're really hot right now. Having somebody that's always just monitoring these things, because certainly the auction houses will give you a value of what they'll anticipate getting for it, but you can't then get, what do we anticipate the local dealership getting for it? And is the current person who's driving it interested in buying it
Right.
for an even bigger premium? So the decision tree just gets more and more complex, and that's
Yeah.
actually where AI thrives.
One of the deals that I had an opportunity to work on when I was at UBI was with GM Financial. And so that was the very thing that we were working on with them, is putting a UVI machine at their distribution center so that the consumer, when it was ready to bring the vehicle, they could take it there. And then from there, the condition report would be handed over, but GM would then, based on what they saw on the condition report, do we want you to keep this vehicle? What are we going to encourage you to do? And maybe we want to keep it so that we can resell it or put somebody else in it. So yeah, you have some forward thinking folks out there that are already saying, yeah, I want to tap into this and I want to be I want to be on the forefront of it.
Right, because I think we were talking earlier about if whether you should keep the car as opposed to selling the car. And because yes, as an EV driver myself, I wish I would have sold it back when used EVs were getting top dollar, because now it's like, nope, hold on to it
Yep.
for another year at least or something. And kind of what you all have been talking about here, that there's now new, models or short-term leases. There's the Ford Drive program specifically for Uber drivers, where they're very short leases and they're using it for a specific purpose. But that very well could start to apply to the everyday driver and not just Uber drivers. So there's all these new ways of quote unquote owning a vehicle, and you don't really own it, right? You're just utilizing the vehicle. And then, from a fleet perspective too, when you were talking about data and okay, so you have multiple drivers driving the same vehicle, then how does the AI determine, okay, well, when it's this driver, the car gets a better performance versus this driver. So either give this driver more training or put him in an ICE vehicle, because he gets he gets better mileage out of an ICE vehicle than he does out of an EV vehicle, something like that. So I mean, talk about complex. There's so many factors to be taken in to consideration here. It's pretty exciting, but also very complex. So you got a tough job. That committee of yours is a tough job.
When you just said based on the driver, and so it made me kind of laugh, because I thought, if you go to what happened with Hertz and them removing all of their Teslas, I have said from the beginning that was not a Tesla issue or an EV issue. That was an education issue. And so maybe we need AI as the person comes up to get a rental to say whether that person would be a good candidate for an EV or not, because maybe that was the problem. There were too many people trying to be forced into one. They didn't want it. They were scared. They didn't think that, it would get the range that it needed. And I heard horror stories of nobody knowing how to turn the windshield wipers on. And, so there is kind of that education. So like, we wouldn't put my mom and my dad in one, but you might put my daughter in one who's technologically savvy and may want to drive one to see if she wants one. But yeah, so I think we should push that for rental companies, looking at the person.
No, it's interesting. I don't even know if the AI would necessarily help. I mean, the out of town visitor use case, where you're not just tootling around the city, but you're using it on a trip, is definitely one of the tougher EV use cases. So, yeah, I certainly think that we're going to see more EVs in more dense city environments.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you're able to do 30 miles away or 30 minutes away as your local charger.
Well, I have one in my house, so I charge every night, or not every night, but I probably charge every other day or so. But like, I just drove mine to North Carolina for the Auto Intel Summit, and everybody was like, "You drove? Well, how many times did you have to stop and charge? How long did you have to charge?" And I was like, "I only had to stop twice." And I didn't have to charge as long as I did, but I started watching a Netflix show that was 30 minutes and I wanted to finish it. So I just did a full charge. That way I didn't have to stop a third time. So it was like a lot of it just depends on, how fast you want to get there, which I am one, let me go in, get a drink, get a snack, sit in my car, walk my dog a little bit, so to your point, yes, if I don't want to stop for 30 minutes, then I may not want to rent an EV. But
well, to your point on education, and this will kind of wrap it up for us as we're coming up on time, but I still say that even dealers have a opportunity to play a role in that education and also win a lot of customer loyalty. Because let me tell you, if my Volkswagen dealer, I drive an ID4, if my Volkswagen dealer said, hey, we have a couple of new classes that, free, you can come and learn the ins and outs of your vehicle and why you should only charge to 80%. And then we'll, you can ask questions, and where, someone would take the time to explain all the quirks and details of driving an EV. I might, stick with the ID4, even though it's super quirky, but they took the time, to educate. So I don't know why dealers aren't doing that. Maybe there are some out there that are, but to your point, there's a lot of education that still needs to be done.
yeah,
And I think they could fill that gap very easily.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We are going to wrap it up as we have started doing with a fun lightning round, if you're okay with that.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, here we go. So what was your dream car when you were a kid?
So dream car was probably the Back to the Future DeLorean.
Oh yeah.
But I had my first car was a 1986 Camaro Z28 with T-tops, red, and that was kind of pretty awesome too. So I think that's my dream car, minus the Back to the Future DeLorean.
That's a sweet car. Oh my gosh. All right, best decade, 70s, 80s, or 90s?
Okay, so I'm gonna have to go with music here. So I'm a huge Rod Stewart fan. And if you think of Rod, most people think of the 70s, even though he's, every decade is great for Rod music. But so I was born in the 70s, so I'm gonna go 70s.
All right, all right. Godfather or Star Wars?
So in kindergarten, I had a Princess Leia lunchbox, so I'm going Star Wars.
Nice. All right, finish this sentence. Electric vehicles are?
All I ever want to drive and own.
I love it. I love it. All right, finally, what's the most exciting thing for you about the automotive industry?
There's so many things. If you're talking industry specific, I just love the people. I love everything about the community, and it's like the world that we're in is sort of this like hidden little nugget that nobody knows about, and so I think we're all really protective over it. But automotive as a whole, I love that we're talking about AI and technology and all of the things that we're going to see in the future. I remember watching the Jetsons and thinking, are we going to have driving cars in my lifetime? And I think we might have driving cars in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the unknown, like I have chill bumps like with this question. I love everything about it, but I love that we never know what we're going to get. We never know how the consumer is going to really buy in, and we get to help kind of navigate all of that and on the side that we're on. And so yeah, I think technology and people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I will say, whoever makes a flying car that sounds like the Jetson-mobile, I think will win out in the end, purely because of the sound, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yes. And I'm still waiting on my maid too.
Oh, Rosie, yes.
Rosie,
Absolutely.
yes, thank you. I'm still waiting on Rosie. So
right.
I thought the Roomba was going to be it, but the Roomba is no Rosie.
No, not at all. In fact, I'm not even happy with our Roomba, but that's a whole other podcast. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. It's been a pleasure. And thank you so much, Mark, as always.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Mile Marker Podcast. If you liked what you heard today, give us a like, share this episode on social media, and even take a minute to give us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you can join us for future episodes full of insights and ideas to keep the mobility industry moving forward.